I've spent most of my time when I'm here, a lot of it is in isolation in some ways because for me, it's felt like a need to go inward and really focus on self and really focus on where I'm being led now.
Mhm.
And in that way, it's sort of it's again one of those moments where it's like universe, God, divine is sort of is like shedding and like releasing things out of
Mhm.
that space.
Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 191 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. Well, let me ask you something. How often do you listen to your inner voice, that divine inner voice that you know is coming through God? How often do you listen to that voice, and how likely are you to follow through on what that voice is compelling you to do? So, my guest today, Kellie, lives in Belize. She is a Reiki healer, and Kellie is in a space of transformation. And she uprooted her life where she was working in the US very successfully in a career that she had been in for years, very, very successfully, but she felt a pull, and she listened to that pull and she followed through. And so many things have unfolded for her spiritually, and she shares that with us. Along with that, she shares spiritual tools that she turns to along her journey and in her life that I think will be very helpful to you. And so many of us are in that space and have been for quite a while, where we're trying to navigate what we feel compelled to do, what our passion is, and what pays the bills. What is the risk or the risk involved? She's going to talk about that and how that played out for her. So it is really a really wonderful, wonderful conversation. Let's get to it. Let's meet Kellie and let's start healing. Welcome, Kellie.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to be here.
I'm very glad that you're here. It's very good to meet you. You are in Belize.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am currently in Belize on one of the islands in San Pedro.
Wow. Well, before we get to that, let me ask you, how are you feeling today in your connection with God and that vibration and relationship?
I'm feeling very connected and probably more connected than I've ever been. Um, Physically today, I would say I feel super plugged in being here with you. As we talked about when you were talking about joining, when I know that I'm meant to be doing something, I get sort of the goosebumps or chill bumps that some people call. And so for me, this just feels divinely led. And so I feel very connected here.
Wow. Well, thank you. That means so much to me. And I feel connected as well and have enjoyed corresponding with you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your journey to what led you to be in Belize? And does that speak to the spiritual path that you're on right now?
It's certainly been a part of my spiritual path, but I'll um, back up a little bit, and I'll say I started coming to Belize 15 years ago. Yoga's been a huge part of my journey, and I would say like a baby yogi back then, and I was probably just about 5 years into it at that point. And I was also between two crazy jobs, so I've been in the crisis response and relief space for a long time, for the last 20 years. And in that time, there's always been these moments of like days or a week between jobs or whatever. And there was this one that was the first one that was coming for me. I was going to have like a week between jobs. And I was like, I heard a yoga retreat is supposed to be really calming and relaxing. And this was before like Google search was a big thing, right? And I decided to type in yoga retreat. And the funny part about this is if you knew the couple that ran this retreat, they didn't do any marketing. So this was like definitely way before there was any algorithms and I mean, who knows? But all this to say, this yoga retreat popped up in Belize on the north side of the island that I'm on right now. And I decided to just do it. And it wasn't a retreat in the sense that it was a whole group going or something like this. It was a location that offered yoga that I could fully detox. And I learned that it was during slow season. So I was literally the only one there with the family that ran the place. I started to feel like it was like an immediate connection because it was like this customized experience for me. And I was able to fully unplug. I was able to do yoga every day with the owner and like I couldn't believe it. I was in my 20s and I probably put the whole thing on a credit card. I definitely probably couldn't afford it back then. All that to say, I every couple of years I would come back. So anytime that I was in sort of this I would just say crispy mode, like feeling burnt out, whatever that might be. I knew that this was a safe place for me. And the funny thing about it now, which I'll kind of go back into, but I learned that this island is actually a party island. And I would come here to completely unplug, completely detox at this one place. And I would do that and go out on the water. And those are the being on the water is like one of my not just safe places, but just joyful places where I feel very connected to divine, God, source, all the things. So for me, it's been a special place. And about 3 years ago, I didn't come here every year. I'd come here, like I said, every couple of years. 3 years ago, I found myself here twice. It was my 40th. I had friends and family here. I had just been through a separation with a partner. All of my things were in storage. And one of my best friends, Yarnell, decided to ask one of the owners well, that we were here, like, don't you guys have a place Kelly could rent? And I was thinking, Yarn, what are you talking about? Like, I am not moving. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, let's just ask. And sure enough, obviously, this story goes where we know it goes, which is the owners were like, actually, we have this place coming up in October. And I said, well, listen, like, I don't want to make any brash decisions. Let me get back to California. Let me think about this. Bop, bop, bop. And obviously, I came back here. So I thought I was going to be here 6 months. I was taking a bit of a sabbatical. That's a longer story, but all that to say is it kind of created the space where I was kind of making large, big life decisions where also I felt like God, divine universe was clearing the way for a lot, as I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. And so it was this moment where it was like, well, if it's not like I can do this, so why not? And so 3 years ago, I landed here and I've spent, I should say, somewhere between like 50 and 75% of my time here the last 3 years.
Mhm.
Definitely didn't think I'd be here this long. However, a year and a half ago, I was then led to this land that's actually on the mainland. So I'm on one of the islands. There's also a very large part of Belize that's on the mainland. And that's a lot more sort of, there's definitely jungle, bush, that kind of thing. Never would I have said, do I want to own land in the jungle? I didn't know that. Nor did I think that I would buy, like, not only like go there and spend time there, but actually buy land there. That's a much longer story, but again, one that I feel divinely led, completely intuition led. And over the last year, I decided to buy this a year ago. And over the last year, I've been building a house. So,
Ooh.
yes. So, all that to say is I am here. I am now here in a much more committed way,
Mhm.
probably than anywhere I've ever been. So,
Wow. As you're talking, I'm thinking about when you're saying divinely led and that inner truth,
hmm
and something that I say to people, even in my personal life, that, you can feel the truth of God inside of you,
yes.
and so when you really, really connect to that,
hmm
that place. And so can you say what that feels like? Because you could find beautiful space in the US,
Yes.
but there's something that I'm hearing you say. I mean, you're feeling divinely led, and I'm wondering what that feels like for you inside, that
Yes.
that pull?
It's, this kind of starts to blend other areas of my spiritual life around sort of some of my clairsensitivities, which I would say right now and for a long time, it's been claircognizant, clairaudient, and so for me, it's not just a physical feeling, it's a knowing, it's a hearing from a very specific part of my consciousness, not, where one that I have to and I'm getting a lot better at discerning, but where I have to kind of quiet the sort of ego, personality, and that piece of things, and to kind of turn up the volume of divine source spirit. All of that said, when I was going through the process of this land, because that'll get back to your initial question of the feeling, the first time I went, I actually took a couple friends with me. And, it was one of those things where we get out there on the land, we're all walking through, we're like, this is magical. There's quartz in the creek. This is like, woo, and it's like, what are we doing out here? Like, I can't believe it. Like, why would I even be looking at like this is bananas. Like it's amazing, but what would I be doing with this? So that was in January of 23. Wait, 20, maybe no, sorry, January of 24, maybe. And like so I literally like we went to this land, had a great time, left. So, like probably 4 months later, I drove by that land for some reason and it came back and it was like, you need to go see, like, it was just sort of like this, you need to go see this again. And I was like,
Mhm.
"This is like, what am I gonna do with this?" But then funny enough, my family had just been in town. My stepsister left something at a resort in Hopkins, which is a town further south. And here it's sure you can ship things places, but it's a little easier just to literally physically go and get things. But I knew if I did that, I could also arrange more time to go spend more time on the land. And I felt like, well, if I go, I need to go completely by myself. Yes, with the previous owners, but I needed to see if how it felt with me and not just with my friends feeling like it's magical, it's fun, all the things. And the funny part about it was I would get there and it would just I would have this immediate feeling of like I'm I'm supposed to do like it didn't make any sense, but it's like I'm supposed to do something here and I didn't even need to walk the entire land, which is very unlike me. Like I'm very logical, very analytical. I want to see every angle of it. I want to like do all my due diligence. And it's not to say I didn't do my due diligence. I spoke to the neighbors. I spoke to a gentleman who lived on there for a few months, lived on the land. I tried to do a lot of that. And at the same time, it was just like, just keep moving, like keep doing this. It was more of a I would say in that sense, it was more of like a knowing and an audience. And then when I'm there, the feeling of it is like pure joy and like time has gone. Like when I'm in certain locations, particularly on the land, there's
Mhm.
spaces that feel I would and the best way for me to describe it is multidimensional. It's like
Mm.
I'm not just in this physical space. Like I feel and I'm in a totally different place.
Yeah.
So it was sort of I think for me, it's a knowing that God divine is within and all around me, but then the feeling of it is, I would say, like deep joy and love and often an out of body experience. Just sort
Mhm.
of like the whole idea that we are souls and not just an idea, but a knowing that we are souls in a human body or having a human experience, not the other way around.
Wow. Are you studying while you're there right now? Are you working remotely? Like, what's your life like?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So I would say also 3 years ago, as part of those big life shifts, I left my big corporate job, certainly had the experience of the golden handcuffs. And I would say, as part of that, my father was actually the last person I told because I felt like I would be letting him down in a way because I had success in America particularly, but a lot of success everywhere in our world is about financials and in one way, like I had made it, right? Like I was in a big job, I could pay all my bills, I had savings, all the things that I dreamed about in my 20s, at 40, I was like financially secure and in that place, right?
Mhm.
And and that actually comes back to so I'm actually gonna go backwards and tell that story a little bit. That knowing of needing to leave that job was also an intuitive, divine led, like visceral, internal, like it's time. And it was like, and I was working with a professional coach at the time, and I had said to her, "Are you sure there's not like 1% that wants me to stay?" Because of course there's like this ego part of me that's like, how could I possibly be walking away from this money and blah blah blah. And she's like, "Not one." And so in one way I had a little bit of external validation. And then what really sealed it for me in that way was I was taking a work flight. I was going from Puerto Rico to LA. And I remember maybe that coach or someone else, there was something that I'd been listening to about just keep asking the question, like ask your inner self these questions and start asking spirit to come in to help you answer them, right? So I'm sitting on the plane and I'm writing, and I'm still, I love write, like I still write everything out. So I'm writing out and I'm saying, why am I not leaving like my corporate job? And literally what showed up was, what would people say? What would people think? And when I saw that, it wasn't, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to find another job? How am I going to, it was literally, what will people think and what will people say? And when I saw it, it was like, wow, like that's why I'm staying.
Mhm.
And I just had to really face that and say, like, this isn't going to be easy or comfortable. And telling people was one of the hardest things to do, because I'd always, whatever job I had, I always had the next one. And I've been working since I was 14 in restaurants, right? So it's like, that was a long time to not have any break, any like break in between jobs, right? So I wasn't going from this big corporate job to another big corporate job or whatever, the typical trajectory or what I would have done previously. It was like, no, I'm making this decision and I'm making this sort of somewhat abrupt stop. No,
Mhm.
I'll kind of explain that in a second. But all that to say, it was a very visceral inner knowing. It wasn't like something had happened at work, like I gotta go, kind of. It wasn't like that. It was literally like, it's time for me to go. Like I'm,
Mhm.
and for me, my work has always felt like my life's work. So I've been blessed in that way. It's not, I can't say it's been easy work necessarily, but it's felt like a path I'm meant to be on. And for
Mhm.
me, I like to have that purpose. And I know a lot of people can go to work or desire to go to work without that. But for me, it feels better when I have purpose as well. And so I think I had gotten to a point where I didn't necessarily feel like I was making an impact anymore, or the desired impact I would want to make. So there was a little bit of that. I'll call that out. Um, but overall, it was a knowing that it was time to go.
Yeah.
So within that, and in that job, I was still working also with a university, so in academia. But I was an affiliate faculty, and I would just fly in and out for sessions, right? And it was a program I had been through called the National Preparedness Leadership Initiative, and I would just go in and out like that. And I remember calling them to say, "Listen, I know that if you asked me to do this, you might have asked me because of the role that I was sitting in." And the head faculty was like, "Kelly, that's not why we asked you. Like, we want you to stay on. In fact, we'd want you to increase your time if you could." And I said, "Well, I'd be interested in that, but not necessarily right away. I'm really trying to take a break." So I share all of that to say I kept my academic job and I continued that in a part time way. So I continue that today. It's not full time, but it is something that has kept me connected to the crisis world in a way that I'm no longer in the day to day operations. And at the same time, I'm a part of like this global network that's really, really kind of cool. And in this work now, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, it's like I'm trying to look at how do I translate some of what I'm learning and unfolding and exploring in the healing and spiritual world into a translated way of speaking in this academic world, because for some
Mhm.
reason it seems like there's a connection. And
Mhm.
so I find little moments to do it. I'm not quite there, but there seems to be some reason I'm still tethered to the crisis space. And as we know, in the healing space and spiritual like it's all connected. And
Yeah.
so it's like really trying to figure out I do and one of my roles in life I would say is sort of a bridge, right? And
Yeah.
so how am I that bridge in this world?
Yeah.
So I'll
Yeah.
pause there. I think I went on a total tangent from what you asked,
No,
but
I get it.
anyway,
You were connecting the dots, and I relate to you, even though I have no uh, relation to what you're specifically saying that you did.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I do something completely different, but I still relate to what you're saying and your
yeah,
desires. And in fact, when we were emailing and you mentioned your profession in terms of crisis relief, I thought humanitarian work. That's what
yeah,
that said to me.
Yeah.
And so that to me is wanting to serve, wanting to connect, wanting to help. And
Mhm.
so that's a part of your human and spiritual being, I would think.
Yes, and my path with that, I would say well, I would say, like, s service industry and humanitarian work were sort of the basis of getting
Mhm,
into that career space. So it was when I would say 14, 15 timeframe, I got into restaurants, so that's obviously service industry, not
mhm.
humanitarian work,
Yeah.
although some might argue that. And then in my early 20s after college, I went into AmeriCorps, so some refer to that as Domestic Peace Corps, and I did that in Atlanta, Georgia as, I guess someone would call it a teacher, but I would say I can't officially say I'm a certified teacher. I was not, but we had a reading program during the day and an after school program after school. And so that was sort of the basis of an organization that I worked with that then began to engage alumni of that AmeriCorps group into disaster relief. So Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. They sent me down to start a response program to engage alumni of AmeriCorps. What I thought was a 6-week project turned into 7 years,
Mhm,
and that literally turned into, like, one disaster after another, and so I will say that was probably the most formative experience of my crisis of getting into the space and then just sort of understanding it and then having to sort of learn and grow with that.
mhm.
So I was 10 years in the nonprofit space, and then 10 years in private sector with obviously now a blend of academia, so
And in your work, would you train people who would engage with people who were experiencing the crisis, or were you also engaging with the people who are experiencing the crisis?
yeah, it was a combination of both. So the first role, was an organization called Hands On Network, and they focus on how do you donate people's time, talent, and resources. So in this way, it was how do you do that before, during, and after a crisis, and in this case, Hurricane Katrina, like during and after. So it was
Mhm,
really looking at, I would say, now looking back, it was more that we were a part of the relief, recovery, and rebuilding phase. Response is typically that very first, think of first responders, right?
mhm,
I was never in a first responder role. It was always sort of in that space of how do we direct people's time, talent, resources. And then, so think of volunteers, people donating money, people donating
mhm,
things, and how to coordinate all of that. So we would work with a lot of corporations that would come into New Orleans, for example. They'd want to rebuild houses, they'd want to rebuild schools, et cetera, et cetera. So it just sort of evolved as the city began to rebuild itself. But it was housing 100 volunteers a night, deploying those people out, and then also bringing in other groups from around the world to
yeah.
engage in volunteer service. That was sort of the basis of that work, and then began building other programs in other organizations.
So when COVID came, did you begin to feel, I know that you've been, really on this path since you were a teenager, I
Mhm.
think you've said. So when COVID came though, did you feel like a big shift in terms of uh, this change coming on, or this pivot coming on for you?
Um, in the sense of sort of spiritual and healing in that way.
In the sense of uh, wanting to do something that was even more meaningful, like go to another
Mm,
level for
mm.
yourself.
Yeah, yes and no. I would say at the beginning, not as much. Like I wasn't at the beginning, not as much. Maybe a little bit towards the end, or the end of lockdown. I guess is probably because I was in cities in California where there was dense populations, so we were often kind of locked down, or however we
Mhm,
used to call that. Um, and again, I feel like I've always had this connection. I've always had a spiritual practice. It was just sort of continuing to develop that. And then it was
yeah.
more in that time of having to like do more of the shadow work, right? Like do more of that inner work is
Mhm.
where I think that's when I started going deeper and deeper on that work.
Yeah, yeah.
And then honestly the last 3 years in Belize, I think there's a lot of folks that probably have this idea of like, "Oh, Kelly's down in Belize drinking mai tais on the beach." And that is so far from my experience. Not that that doesn't happen occasionally, but it's a very different experience than that. And I would say that I've I've spent most of my time when I'm here, a lot of it is in isolation in some ways because for me, it's felt like a need to go inward and really focus on self and really focus on where I'm being led now.
Mhm,
And in that way, it's sort of it's again one of those moments where it's like universe, God, divine is sort of take is like shedding and like releasing things out of
mhm,
that space. And so that was at least I mean, the first year, I would just say there's been a lot of uncomfortable moments and it was not a comfortable decision initially, of course. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going there for 6 months. That'll be fun." Um, and then like living here for a longer period of time and then kind of coming back to that inner work, I would say it was then about 2 years ago that sort of gifts, abilities, etcetera, started unfolding in a new way.
mhm,
Um, and really a year ago when I decided to go ahead a little over a year ago, I guess almost a year and a half ago now, decided to go down the path of becoming a Reiki practitioner. And for those that have done Reiki or that are practitioners, they can understand that. But I think for those that don't, it basically it pushed me more into the energy space. So being able to see everything as energy, everything as
mhm,
frequency,
mhm,
and then translating that into like, wait a second. So wait, that's actually so God, source, divine, all energy, all frequency. Just started expanding and evolving my own
yeah.
consciousness and my own thought around it. Um, and that's sort of led me to where I am now.
Can what can you share that you're comfortable and willing to share about the shadow work that you've done and,
Mhm.
just the journey, like, what you're learning? Like, how did you get to the point of, where God is shedding the layers? Like,
Mm.
what can you describe some of the experience and the process,
Yes.
how things have been.
Um, yes, I would say when I really so about 10, let's see, it's almost been 12. Let's call it between 10 and 12 years ago, I was in a very unhealthy relationship. I had also lost a pregnancy that I was much desiring. And that was a point in my life that was maybe the it felt like at that moment the darkest. It was truly I didn't know. I really like thinking about how I survived those moments is like only God, only universe, and only the people that were around me at that time helped me get through that moment. And what I was led to was really um, more spiritual teachings and more teachers. And what I started learning was how our thoughts create our reality. And I started to understand it intellectually, but I didn't understand how to embody it because I was so much in survival and I was also still like I was still like one in my mode of working around the clock. And so, but what I decided to do at that time was every moment that I wasn't with somebody, that I was driving, I was getting ready for work, I was on a plane, whatever, I was listening to some sort of spiritual teaching across multiple religions, across multiple spiritual practices. It was just if I was led to something and it was resonating with me in the sense of love, guidance, how I needed to change my thoughts, I would go there and that started to
Mm,
literally start rewiring my brain um, and my subconscious, but it still took years for that to kind of unfold. I do think that those processes can happen faster for people, but for me, it's been a long process of dismantling the conditioned programming. So from my inner wounds, what I understand now is my deep seated sort of fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, need for external validation, which stems from lots of childhood things. Um, we all have different experiences, but I think a lot of us can fundamentally relate to those things. Um, and, uh, and so through the last, I would say, 10 to 12 years on not just listening to the teachings, but then beginning to practice more. And so I remember even probably 5 years ago, I still wasn't in a place of a daily meditation practice. And I would just keep saying, I know this I keep hearing this everywhere. Like I need to figure this out. Like how do I not have a daily meditation? And I was one of those people that would be like my brain is too busy. I can't slow it down. Da, ba, 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 whatever. And it's like everyone's brain work, like almost, I don't know anyone that starts meditation that's like, this is amazing. Like, I just am sitting here, like that's just not how it works. Right. So I just had to start somewhere. And I would do that in combination with my yoga practice. And, and that helped, I think, sort of clear out some of the resistance that I had created in my mind. But when you go back to talk about what is the shadow work or what's that, it's like really going deep in the inner child work. And I used to be one of those people that was like, that is so silly. Like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. That's like whatever. Like, and especially being in the crisis space, you're kind of built to be like, "Oh, I can handle this." I'm like, you just like put up all these guards, right? And what you realize is like, wait a second, like, no, not just being authentic and vulnerable, but actually focusing, looking back at myself and saying, why am I showing up this way? Like, why am I, like, why? Like, I remember there was this woman that worked, like, she was on my team, younger woman, and I had to face like this really ridiculous programming that was like, if I went through this, she needs to go through this,
Mhm.
right? Because she's younger and whatever. But it was like, wait a second, why? Why does she actually have to do that? She doesn't need to go through the same. Like, I should want to make things easier and better for her, right? And there was some dynamic, and she and I are still good friends today. But there were various dynamics that she really forced me to see, and it wasn't her telling me these things. It was like the experience, and then sitting there and being like, wait a second, that's I can
Mhm.
really think about this differently. So, um, you know, also exploring various modalities. So I think initially it was the traditional psychotherapy, psychiatry, medication, etc. And all of those things are great. And I look at all of these now as tools and wherever we are resonating. So what is our frequency? What are we resonating with? What's going to work for you might not work for me. What's going to work for me might not work for you. So, and one of the programs that I think was very helpful, and I know, some people love it's a kind of, some people love it, some people don't, but is, the 12 steps. And so for me, I did,
I relate to you so much.
yeah. Was like, being in Al-Anon and working, having a partner who had very challenges with addiction and things. I was thrown into that, and I chose it, right? But I am so grateful for it now. Like before, of course, I was probably more of looking at it from a victim mentality standpoint, right? Of like, oh, how could this happen to me? And I think we all get there. But once you shift it from victim mentality to choice, like, oh, wait, I'm choosing this, I have choice, and I can actually see this experience as part of my soul's evolution and unfoldment, everything changes. For
Mhm.
me, it has.
Yeah.
And so by me able to see things as things are happening for me or through me, they're not happening to me. And one of my teachers, I would say, which is Michael Beckwith, runs Agape International. He he has a great way of looking, and he kind of breaks down the sort of how to think about consciousness in the various levels, and not saying you go from one and you graduate to the other. It's that we're constantly going in and out of these, and you can, once you're aware of it, you can start moving yourself in and out of them a lot faster and
Mhm.
get yourself back up into these higher consciousness areas. And I think that framework is there across multiple, um, I would even say industries, like multiple industries, multiple faiths, multiple religions, but it's finding the thing that works for you to be able to put that mirror up and say like, wait a second, like this isn't working for me. It's also not working for other people.
Mhm.
Am I harming anyone? That kind of thing. But I think the biggest lesson for myself through all of this has been learning to love myself and accept myself, which again, I thought was like the silliest thing on the planet. And then intellectually, I probably started understanding it like 5 years ago. And then 3 years ago, it was like, oh, maybe this is a good idea. And then to now being like, oh my gosh, it's absolutely critical. And now I understand it. And I think I embody it like, I don't know, maybe I'm at 75%. I don't know. I'm still working on that. But I think that I'm in a much different place about it. And interestingly, there was even a recent, I'll just be vulnerable here. There was a recent unfoldment for me because, so 20 years ago or a little over 20 years ago when I did the AmeriCorps program, it was the first time that I really understood my white privilege in America. And I got angry. I was like, and it was like, so I just became so dedicated to social justice and inclusion and bop, 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 all these things. And that's a whole longer story. But in that process, I didn't realize one of the things I started doing was creating hate or non acceptance of myself and other people that looked like me. And I just literally realized this, no joke, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And spirit came very strong to me and was like, it's time. You have to start seeing that this is a part of you that you're not accepting. This is a part of you that you've shut down and that you're saying is not worthy. And I just had no idea that that was part, and it was like, "Oh, this makes total sense," because I felt like I needed to be somebody that was advocating for people that don't look like me, particularly in America. And now it's like, okay, like, I know that that's part of me that has to fully embody. That's part of me that I have to come around and accept, and, like, and others that look like me, like, which is just,
Yeah.
like, sounds like a really funny thing for maybe people that haven't been in this work or that, but for me, that was a part of me that I had to realize I was not accepting.
Yeah, and let me ask you if you're saying I love what you just said. First of all,
Mhm,
I love the what you just said and the way that you put it, and I wanna ask you is this what you're saying too? Excuse me, to make sure that because I have such feelings around this.
mhm.
Are you saying when you said that you weren't, self-accepting, is that, the same as saying white guilt? Is that the same or is that different?
Um, I'm sure it's similar. Yes, I'm sure there's something around that of, like, I feel guilty because I'm in this skin tone and I can walk in our country and other places differently than you can. Um, and I actually think for me, it was like it became shame. And I think, Brene Brown has been so good at differentiating those 2 for me, and that is, like, guilt is something where sometimes can be healthy, right? Sometimes can be, like, encouraging us for different behaviors or encouraging us to feel like, you don't wanna carry that around everywhere and be like, "Oh, I feel guilty all the time, and blah, blah, blah," but sometimes there's, like, maybe something we've done or said that, like, triggers us into maybe healthier or more loving action. Shame is something where we fundamentally believe something is wrong with us. And for me, that's the feeling
Mhm,
that I had gotten to
mhm,
and started projecting on other people that looked like me to the point where I would want people that looked like you to think that I'm different than other people that look like me. Like I'm one of the good ones, you know? And that's just why I mean, I know why I did it, and it's just wild. And so now I'm, like, going through this whole process of just trying to release it and really release the shame, not even to the point like, I don't need to feel the guilt anymore either, um but the shame is what I need to fully release and accept and embody, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I can I'm saying, like, me personally, I can tie those 2 together, and I think that there's no use for guilt, actually. I
Mm,
feel that there's, outside of the court system and
yeah,
what it's supposed to represent, but I feel like, I mean, guilt, that feeling can bring an awareness, and,
yeah,
I think what you're describing to me is a way to, change the world.
mm,
Because it is not, helpful to, you or anybody else, or if somebody else felt the same way, describe
mhm,
what you're describing, it would not be helpful for that person to feel that way, or for,
yeah,
someone like me, or looks like me, or a person of color, or, a woman to does the person doesn't need that.
right,
The awareness is important.
yes,
The awareness, but, that's transcendent what you're describing,
mhm,
to me, it is transcendent, and that's why I asked about white guilt because that's the way I would describe it from my personal,
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah,
perspective, and
yep,
regardless, however, I mean, words are words, but
Yeah.
what you are conveying to me is transcendent.
Oh.
And it really
Yeah, no, for me, it definitely I feel like it is for me, like, I didn't and once I actually said it out loud and wrote it in this I'm in a mentorship group right now, and it's mostly Black women and then me. And so I felt like, "This is the group I actually need to say this to because I feel most afraid of their response." And then when I did it, I literally would just started crying. Like, it was just, like, crying, and to me, what that meant was that was shame. Like, I felt ashamed
Mhm,
of me being in this vessel, and interestingly, my coach and mentor, she and her husband are both, African American. Well, yeah, both African American, um, and they were actually the ones to reflect this to me, and they both in their own way said to me, especially if we're thinking, in that space, we're definitely talking more of ourselves as if we are souls, we have potentially had multiple other lifetimes. And therefore, we've all been in different skin tones and different vessels and different genders and different, all the things. And in that case, then all of this that we're doing, so call it racism, classism, ageism, all the things, sexism, it's we're doing it to ourselves. And when we start to see it in that way, it changes. And it's like intellectually I understood it. And now I'm like, whoa, I think I'm getting to the point of embodying it more where I can actually feel like I can walk around and not feel ashamed of myself, if that makes sense. I
mhm.
don't know if I'm
Yes,
articulating it well, but
yes,
that was my recent
I
experience.
do, I understand what you're saying, and I know a lot of things are done virtually, but do you have a community there in Belize, like, physically? Like, are there
I do
people
not. I mean, I have a community of people that I feel like care about me and I care about them, but not in this space.
in mhm, mhm,
Yeah. And I would say that's one of the challenges that there are 2 people here maybe that I can have, maybe 3, that I could have these conversations, 3 people in the country so that I feel like I could really have these conversations. Um, and part of that is I believe, like, some of the local programmed conditioning that exists here. Part of the value of me being outside of the States for the last 3 years for the majority of my time, not just because I used to travel the world for work, but very different than actually living and being in community in a very different way. Um, because I'm able to leave the conditioned programming where I was, and I can see it so clearly when I'm somewhere else. And it's not to say I mean, we all grow up in our own conditioned programming, but coming outside of that and being in Belize versus the US, I can go in and out of it and now see what that is. And then when I come back here, I can see more clearly what that programming looks like here.
mhm,
And I think, to be honest, it's been part of it's been a building trust with the people that know me. They know that I am caring, that I'm a loving person, to the point where one of my neighbors, she's younger, local Belizean in her 20s, and been raised very, I would say, not just Christian, but probably deep kind of old school Catholicism. Um, and anyone who's Catholic and loves their religion, wonderful. I'm just saying there's some maybe harmful things in that. I can say that because I was baptized Catholic, my father's Catholic, lots of Catholic guilt in there, very unhealthy and unhelpful for any of us. Um, all of that said is there is a belief system that runs deep here in multiple ways because Belize is definitely a melting pot. But there's this element of belief that the sort of energy healing, yoga, etc., is, uh, for lack of a better term, the devil's work.
mhm,
And it's not blatantly, I mean, some people will blatantly say it that way, but I've had various individual experiences that have been challenging. And so pretty, I'm pretty quiet about this work that I do here. But I say this because my neighbor, she came to me like in the last few months, and she was like, I did not believe in energy and all this stuff, but she's like, because of you, and I now like totally, I like totally understand it. Like she's like, I don't understand it all, but I believe in it now. And she's like, I literally walk in your space and it feels totally different. My daughter wants to spend all her time with you. Like there's something going, like something you're doing is different. And so
to me, that speaks, it's not about me. It's just the fact that I'm hopefully creating a vessel and a space where people can realize this is like wonderful, and it's loving, and it's healing, and there's not like I'm not worshiping a devil, yeah. And I just offer, and it's in the last like 6 months, like some of the people that know me will now ask, and it'll be like kind of like some people will ask like, oh, I heard you do this thing. They'll be like, I heard you're an empath. And once they say that, I'm like, yes, I am, but just come and we'll deal, we'll have a session. And I really just do right now simple energy healings with people, and everyone that's had one that's local and not local, but like is just like, this is wonderful, thank you. And they don't know how to explain it, but they're willing and they're receptive. And so I'm just sort of allowing that to be the case, and I don't go into any details. I just sort of do the work, and then
yeah. Wow. And in the time that we have left, I want to ask you some questions. I just love everything that you're sharing. What do you think that God is calling you to do, like for yourself and for others? What do you think all of this is it for the experience to unfold, or simply because that's huge what is happening for you? But what do you think? Is that what you think, or what do you think God is calling you to do?
I think at a macro level, it's like God is saying, there's a few things here, but it's like it's time for me to be me, like to shed all the stuff that's not me, all the stuff I've accumulated, release all the limiting beliefs. So fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, need for external validation, release it all and move into this healing space. And like that, this is the next chapter. Like this is the calling that I have. And it's very unclear what it's going to look like exactly. But what I know is when I step in and I say yes, the next thing shows up. And so if I keep doing that, I'm trusting that. And it doesn't mean it's like a big thing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like some big thing that's going to happen. It's just that I'm trying to be more mindful and listen. And so I would say, obviously a releasing of things on the individual level, and then a full acceptance of myself and a full loving, like without caring what other people think, without caring what other people are going to say, like knowing who I am, knowing where I come from, knowing all, like, it's like, I don't need anyone else to tell me that I'm good, bad, right, wrong, pretty, not pretty, fat, skinny, whatever. I don't need any of it. Like, and I just need to continue to come back to myself. And so I would say my daily spiritual practice is like non-negotiable. So for me, that's even if it's meditation and channeling 30 minutes, like that 30 minutes is, I do not negotiate that for anyone. And so I don't care if like, there's been times where of course I'm like running late on a plane or something. And I literally do it on the plane. Right. But it's like, I create the space, I ground, I still do all the things. And of course it's a little different when I'm on a plane than when I've done my full grounding. But, I would say I'm definitely being called into the space, I think, both to be a facilitator of healing for others, continue to work on myself. That's, evolving and expanding is sort of at the macro level for all of us. And then creating space for these things to happen. So for other facilitators of healing to provide, so that could be like, why am I drawn to the land? Like there has to be something there around this, right? There's plant medicine every 2 feet. There's energy portals and vortices on the land. There's all these, there's quartz in the creek. Like there's so much there, right? So I think I'm unclear exactly, but I'm taking the steps and I'm allowing them to unfold along the way. And it's a combination of releasing these old conditioned beliefs so that I can be that neutral vessel to allow spirit and others, or let's just call it spirit, to work through me to help guide others on that path.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. I think, thank you for saying that, for sharing that, because that is huge. And I think that gives people so much courage, what you just shared. Very, very inspiring. When you say channeling, what is channeling like for you? In what way are you channeling?
So for right now, I would call myself like maybe a baby channeler, in the sense that I work with people that have been channels and mediums and for decades, right? And so while I believe I've not just believe, I know that I've had sort of certain gifts and abilities my whole life, and I've just sort of quieted them or didn't trust it. Like, I think that's the other piece right now that God, source, divine is pushing on me, is saying, or just like making me face, which is I have to release self-doubt. I've been doubting myself for too long. I've been not listening to my intuition for too long. And it's time. It's time. I'm in a mentorship program with many others that have been doing this for decades. My current process for myself has been meditation. So I get into I first ground, and that could look like I use grounding mats sometimes. I use crystals. I use certain mantras, but I first get myself grounded. Then I'll go into meditation for a minimum of 15 minutes. And that can be a guided meditation. For some of your people that might be listening, they might like Esther and Abraham Hicks. I definitely subscribe to those folks. My point being is it could be guided or unguided. And then once I'm in that space, and I would say that sometimes it takes me the full 15 minutes to get there. Other times it takes me 10 minutes, right? But then once I'm in this state of, I no longer feel that I'm in my body, and I'm now like my thoughts are quiet, all of that. It's like, okay, my brain waves have shifted. I can now connect more clearly with spirit, and I can start being discerning on like what's my personality versus what's coming through as spirit. And so what I then do, at least for now, I do auto writing. So I grab my computer and I start asking, I like just say good morning to everybody, and then I start just auto writing, and I just close my eyes and I just allow it to come through.
Mm-hmm. I want to do a part 2. So much is coming up for me that I want to ask you about that requires more time.
Yes.
But this is awesome. This is awesome. And I'm learning, like I'm really processing as you're talking, because as you were talking, I was thinking, well, what's the difference between that and intuition? And I think I'm understanding, I think you just said, for me, what's the difference? I mean, it is intuition, but it's deeper. It's,
it's like, when I feel like it's intuition, usually I'm feeling something I could be feeling something in a certain part of my body. Let's call it gut. Let's call it, that kind of thing.
And I mean, when I say that, I mean, when I think intuition, I mean God. So like for something that I have a gift in is eye gazing, an eye gazing experience. And if I'm doing an eye gazing session with a person, and I'm giving love and they're receiving love, then I'm able to really pick up everything. Spiritually. I don't want to say everything, a great deal. I'm able to understand, and it's all God. It's all God, giving me this information. But I don't think it's the same as what you just described in terms of channeling. And that's what I was.
I mean, I think it's they're connected. And I would say my coach would probably have a much better answer for you. But and this is where I call myself, like, where it's like I feel like I'm still learning so much, and it's still new in the sense of me being fully aware of it, and me allowing it. And what I mean by that is people that are more experienced can definitely differentiate the energies, spirits, like, and there's some people are seeing, and mine will likely come through, like my clairvoyance will likely come through, but right now it's mostly clairaudient, meaning I'm hearing it. But some people, I would say, like my coach, she'll see it, she'll hear, it's like literally, she'll describe it as like an orchestra, right? So she's able to see very specific spirits, feel them, hear them, and channel, like it's amazing.
Yes.
I'm definitely not in that space yet. I do believe I'm moving in that space, but I also believe we're each unique in whatever abilities are unfolding for us, because that's how we're meant to be showing up and helping heal others. So whoever's also coming to us, their vibration or resonance is going to resonate with whatever we have to offer, how we have to offer it, right? And so
Mhm.
I don't think we're all trying to graduate into the very specific way of channeling. You know, as you know, there's some
Mhm.
people that channel very specific multidimensional beings, which I never understood
Mhm.
literally until a year ago. I'd always thought it as people channeling spirit of those that had been deceased, passed, etc. And I'm now understanding that it's just I'm much more clear that it's so much broader than that. And
Mm.
so I would say I'm still in the space of there's a few spirit guides that come to me that I know that are individual, but I would say generally for me right now, it's almost like everyone's represented in one stream right
Yeah.
now. And that's the way I can receive and translate it right now.
Wow. I am very sensitive to your time.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave people hanging right there. And so that they will come back when you hopefully come back
Yeah.
on Let's Start Healing. But I'm so grateful for everything that you shared, and just thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And this was so much fun. So I'm very grateful and I'm glad I said yes.